1 Kings. Chapter 6. Verse 1. In the 480th year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. In the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel. In the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. Verse 2. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide and 30 high. Verse 3. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. Verse 4. He made narrow windows high up in the temple walls. Verse 5. Against the walls of the main hall and inner sanctuary he built a structure around the building, in which there were side rooms. Verse 6. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. Verse 7. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. Verse 8. The entrance to the lowest floor was on the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level and from there to the third. Verse 9. So he built the temple and completed it, roofing it with beams and cedar planks. Verse 10. And he built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits, and they were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. Verse 11. The word of the Lord came to Solomon. Verse 12. As for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, observe my laws and keep all my commands and obey them, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to David your father. Verse 13. And I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people Israel. Verse 14. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. Verse 15. He lined its interior walls with cedar boards, paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling, and covered the floor of the temple with planks of juniper. Verse 16. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards from floor to ceiling, to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. Verse 17. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. Verse 18. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with gourds and open flowers. Everything was cedar. No stone was to be seen. Verse 19. He prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord there. Verse 20. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. Verse 21. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold. Verse 22. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. Verse 23. For the inner sanctuary he made a pair of cherubim out of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. Verse 24. One wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing 5 cubits, 10 cubits from wing tip to wing tip. Verse 25. The second cherub also measured 10 cubits. For the two cherubim were identical in size and shape. Verse 26. The height of each cherub was 10 cubits. Verse 27. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple, with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. Verse 28. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. Verse 29. On the walls all around the temple, in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees and open flowers. Verse 30. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer rooms of the temple with gold. Verse 31. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary he made doors out of olive wood that were 1/5 of the width of the sanctuary. Verse 32. And on the two olive wood doors he carved cherubim, palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid the cherubim and palm trees with hammered gold. Verse 33. In the same way, for the entrance to the main hall he made doorframes out of olive wood that were 1/4 of the width of the hall. Verse 34. He also made 2 doors out of juniper wood, each having 2 leaves that turned in sockets. Verse 35. He carved cherubim, palm trees and open flowers on them and overlaid them with gold hammered evenly over the carvings. Verse 36. And he built the inner courtyard of 3 courses of dressed stone and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams. Verse 37. The foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid in the 4th year, in the month of Ziv. Verse 38. In the 11th year in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the temple was finished in all its details according to its specifications. He had spent 7 years building it.